Welcome to Monobiology. Today we're going to look at a little bit of the anatomy of a muscle, and also we're going to learn a little bit about how a muscle would go about contracting. And remember, this is connected to the nervous system because in order for a muscle to contract, it has to be stimulated by the nervous system. It's not going to happen automatically. Automatically based on the nervous system, but not automatically on its own. Okay, so these pictures are in the booklets that you have, and so you can take notes from the booklets as you watch the video. So the organization of skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle would be any muscle that would be attached directly to your skeleton or your bones. Okay, so there's different types of muscle, obviously. This type is the type that would be on your bones, and these ones are really the ones that are associated with movement and your ability to move about, because they're the ones that are attached to your bones. Okay, the first part we're going to look at here is this outer connective tissue. That's the red part. It's marked here. The epimysium, it's the connective tissue that surrounds the muscle, okay? So it would be around the muscle. This would be your muscle. The whole thing here would be the muscle, okay? Now, the blue, it's called perimysium. It's another type of connective tissue, but it surrounds a group of muscle cells called a fascicle, okay? So the fascicle is a bundle of muscle fibers. That's the orange stuff right here. And an endomysium is connective tissue that surrounds the fiber. And then the fiber itself, the green bit, is an actual muscle cell. Now it's called fibrous because it's very long, and also it can contract. It can expand and contract. It's called fibrous tissue. Okay, so that is the basics of the organization of an actual muscle, a skeletal muscle in this case. Now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in a little bit on this guy, and we're going to see what it is composed of. So here we have an actual muscle cell, and a muscle cell has very specialized parts because it's a specialized type of cell. So for instance, they have a sarcolemma, which is a specialized cell membrane. It's a specialized cell membrane for this particular type of cell. And then the sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm. Okay, so the cytoplasm that would be in here, specialized cytoplasm for a muscle cell. A myofibril is a bundle of filaments. Okay, it is the individual unit of contraction in a muscle cell. So obviously each muscle cell has several myofibrils, which then has even more bundles of fibers that are going to expand and contract and allow the muscle to do what it wants to do. If you look back to the muscle, you're kind of going from like a big unit, but they're kind of like repeating units over and over again. Okay, so if you think back, there were lots of muscle cells inside a group and then inside another group. Well, this is just a continuation of that theme. Inside the muscle cell itself, you have all these myofibrils, which then have bundles of fibers that are going to expand and contract. Okay, so there's a nucleus. Again, there would be just the one nucleus here. The transverse tubules are in red here, sometimes called the T tubules, and they connect the sarcoplasmic reticula, which is plural for reticulum, and they conduct the stimulus down the cell. So once the cell has been stimulated, these make sure that the stimulus goes all the way through the cell. Very important. And then we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which are specialized endoplasmic reticula that store calcium ions. Okay, so just like we have the sarcoplasm, the sarcolemma, we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum instead of the endoplasmic reticulum. But they mean essentially the same thing, but they're specialized for the muscle cell. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at each of the fibers that are inside here. Okay, so we're zooming in on this. And again, these things are all on your thing, so in your booklet, so you can label them as we go through. So what you see here, this is called a sarcomere. Okay, and a sarcomere is a unit of muscle contraction. This would be like a group of fibers inside the myofibril that work together to contract. Okay, and it's the individual unit of the muscle cell. Label it. You get the Z line, Z line, A band, which is the dark band here, and the I band, which is the light band here. Okay, and then from one Z line or Z line to the other, is where the unit of muscle contraction actually is. Okay? Here, this is an actual picture, like that would be taken using a microscope. This is a kind of diagram of it, obviously. Okay, so this is a relaxed sarcomere. Okay, there's the Z line, there's the other Z line, there's the dark band, and there's the light band. Okay, and you can see here the myofilaments, myosin and actin are the two key components. It's very important that you understand those, and they also are both proteins, and they also fit together. So it's another kind of enzyme-substrate kind of relationship, or antigen-antibody relationship, that kind of thing. It's myosin and actin, and they're two proteins and they fit together. Okay? Now, here's a contracted version of it. Notice that the dark band remains the same length. However, the distance between the Z lines has shortened, and that's how a muscle essentially contracts. It's not exactly how it contracts, but that's what it looks like when it contracts. We'll talk a little bit more later about how it contracts. Okay, so muscle contraction. All right, there's a couple of things. First of all, I want you to make note of the two videos or animations. There's both. For those of you that don't have Flash Player at home, I suggest you watch the videos, and for those of you that do have Flash Player, it doesn't really matter. You can watch the videos or you can do the animations. It doesn't matter. For one of them, they're the same, and for the other, it's a slight difference, but you can take the notes from that. So I'm not going to give you specific notes on this. I'm just going to go through it really quickly. Watch the videos and take notes step by step what happens here, okay? Just really quickly to show you, this part right here is representative of the neuromuscular junction. Okay, neuro because this is a neuron, muscular because this is a muscle. Okay, so we've talked about the synapse and how a signal gets passed from one neuron to another or from one neuron to another cell. Well, this is a specific synapse, the neuromuscular junction, where the neuron is communicating specifically with the skeletal muscle cell, or muscle fibers in this case. Okay? So make sure you watch the video. It'll explain. It's very similar to what happens in a regular synapse, but it explains in more detail. Now this little box here is blown up to go down here. Right? So that box there is blown up there, and it's just kind of a close-up. So on this page here, you're going to take notes from the video or the animation, whichever is easier for you. And if you have any questions, make sure you bring them to class. Okay? Now for this set of notes, the video that I want you to watch is the muscle contraction video, okay? So after you understand how the signal gets sent, like that, you're going to have to figure out, you're going to take notes from the video on how the muscle is going to contract. Now just to give you an understanding kind of what's going on here. So first of all, the impulse, the action potential is going to move. So look at how it moves. So it moves along. It's going to move along the transverse tubules. Like I said before, those transverse tubules are responsible for making sure the action potential goes throughout the muscle cell. Okay, very important. The sarcolemma, okay, right there. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, remember those are the specialized endoplasmic reticulum that have calcium. You'll see what role calcium plays in this when you watch the video. Make sure you take good notes. Okay, and again, bring your questions to class. Watch the video, take notes. Okay, so here from the video as well, and you can kind of look at this, I've given you some notes here. We're just going to go through them really quickly. We've got actin and myosin. Remember what I said about those. Those are the key components here, the key proteins that are involved in muscle contraction. Okay, so on a very zoomed in level, this is what you're going to have. Okay, so we start off with the actin and the myosin not really connected. Okay? And then what happens is the calcium ions expose the binding sites on the actin, and the myosin heads bind to actin, forming what we call cross bridges. Okay? So the sarcoplasmic reticulum is going to release the calcium because of the action potential that has been sent, and that's going to cause the binding of the actin and myosin. Okay? That's going to cause this to happen. They're going to lose those, and they're going to change shape, which is going to actually cause the muscle, or the fiber, I guess in this case, to contract. Okay? And then, in order to break it apart, and this is the kind of interesting thing, in order to break it apart, ATP has to bind to it. Okay, so if you've ever had a Charlie horse, think about that. What's the problem there? So if you're ever in a situation where you can't get ATP to this area, the muscle's going to stay contracted. So a Charlie horse, it's like the muscle's contracted, like it won't uncontract, and you get that pain because the muscle's contracting and it won't decontract. That's partly because you're not getting enough oxygen to your muscle cells, and therefore you're not producing enough ATP to break these bonds. So the muscle's going to contract. So sometimes if you work out or you're playing a sport for a long period of time and you go home and you sit down and your muscle tightens up, that's part of the reason why, because you're not producing enough ATP to break this bond here and decontract the muscle or allow the muscle to relax. Kind of cool, huh? All right, folks, that in a nutshell, along with the videos, of course, is how a muscle contracts. Okay, so make sure you watch those videos, make sure you bring your questions to class, and all of the notes that you have here should fill up your booklet. That's the notes for the booklet.